I really want to have some good lighting for the workbench, and I think it needs to be mounted to the wall, because if you just use the ceiling lights and then you're working at the workbench, a lot of times it'll make a shadow right in front of you where you're working, and it's kind of a pain. So I got these cool gooseneck dome lights, and I'm gonna get them mounted right above the windows here. I gotta change the framing around a little bit, and then I'll get some brackets mounted for them and go from there. After getting the electrical boxes for the lights mounted in place, I added some nailers to the framing above the workbench and then jumped in on running the electrical. I'm going a bit mad on the floor wall. I'm thinking it'll be set up as the charging wall for my battery powered tools, so I put in quite a few extra power outlets. The last thing to do before I could start putting up sheathing is drop out the two window frames. One thing I've gotten in the habit of doing before I put the sheathing on is take a couple pictures of the studs and the wires and everything, because you forget so quickly where everything is in there. I'm going to put up some old barn boards on this wall, but wanted to put up some plywood first as backing, making sure this wall is enclosed really well. I kind of had a deadline on getting this wall covered. Kelly was hosting a workshop in the barn the following weekend. I thought it'd be really nice to have it done for her in time for that. I took the time to transfer each stud onto the sheathing as I went, thinking it will help a lot when it comes time to fastening down the barn boards. I was starting to second guess all the outlets to put on the charging wall. It took a ton of time to trim out around all the boxes. There's an old wood building on our farm that needed to be taken down this last winter, and we saved all the siding boards. I thought they would work great on this back wall, and I was pretty sure we had just enough. I drilled and countersank each hole before screwing the barn boards into the studs behind the sheathing. And I gotta cut all the same holes for the electrical boxes a second time. With the sheathing and the barn boards, it was about 1.5 inches of wall material, so the electrical boxes really had to stick out a long ways from the studs so they would be flush with the outside of the barn boards. Alright, let's see if the window still fits. I actually made these windows for my barn doors forever ago. But after they were done, I decided I'd made them way too heavy, and made them again out of some lighter material. Instead of throwing these in the scrap bin, I put the windows in the wall here, which I kind of liked because it ties together the back area of the barn with the front area. I had some glass cut for them, and bolted it back together. I was sweating my butt off. It must have been 100 degrees in the barn with no airflow that day. But I got the last few things finished up just in time for Kelly's class the next day. I even got my Corona neon sign finally hung up on the wall. This video is not sponsored by Corona, but it's definitely powered by it, and Modelo, and Pacifico. Nothing better than the Mexican beers. Kelly had been putting a ton of work into getting ready to host the wreath making class for her and her friends. She'd been collecting flowers, wheat, and other plants of the season for at least a month.
Beautiful.
Is this a picture or video?
Picture. What are you eating?
Brownie.
Yummy.
Right over there, there's that roses can go higher. They're a bit more.
It was fun seeing the barn get invaded by 20 women from the neighborhood. And then the next day, it was back to just me. I thought I'd start in on building a metal frame for the shelf on the tool wall. I cut a piece of plywood to use as a template when I welded the pieces together.
I love using the battery-powered one for knocking off burrs. It works really good because you don't have any cords in the way. It's just quick and easy to grab. But it craps out pretty easy if you have to do any serious grinding. And so for like this where I'm grinding it flush and smooth, you gotta have the battery-powered one. And I thought this is kind of cool down here too. I'll show you. When I was grinding on the welding table up there, I looked under the toolbox and I saw that there's a little bit of wheat straw left over from Kelly's wreath making class. But it made me really glad that I took the time to fill in underneath the toolbox here and the toe kick, just so this stuff doesn't pile up over time and then sparks will bounce underneath there and definitely start a fire.
Our nuts are dropping this time of year on the farm, and my dad was out in the orchards picking them up. He asked if I could weld some more auger flighting on our jackrabbit shuttle, which he had just got for this year, and we've been excited to have. It needed a few modifications to work on our hazelnuts. I think it came from an almond farm down in California. I pulled the bearing off the end of the auger. We just happened to have a used auger out of one of our combines that had the same flighting, so I cut it apart and slid it onto the shaft before getting it welded up. With that job done, I got back to the shelf frame and cutting some more barn boards to fill it in. I cut some small corner gusset brackets that I could use to fasten the boards down. What I'm thinking is a metal frame around my bolt bin on one side and a spot to hang my tools on the other, and then I could put my battery chargers along the top of the shelf. I checked that it was plumb and fastened it down. I reinstalled the barn boards. I'm starting to second guess this project a little bit for a couple of reasons. One is that the top of my workbench is kind of like prime real estate, and I don't know if putting my bolt bin over there in the corner is going to be the best use of it. The second reason is because the light doesn't really work up there anymore. The shelf blocks half the light coming down, and so it's a little redundant. And the third is that it just doesn't look quite like I thought it would, or how I pictured it when I was drawing it on the computer. It looks a little blocky and just doesn't really flow with the rest of the workbench. Almost like a cubicle or something. I'm not quite sure. So what I'm thinking about doing is shortening it a little bit and then raising it up and having it be an upper cabinet. And then I can still have all my storage up there. I'll put some doors on it to cover things up. And then I have the whole space underneath to hang tools on the wall, and the whole workbench will be open as well. I think it'd be a lot more practical and just a better way to go. And I can also put some under cabinet lighting underneath, so it'll still light up the space down below. Cut out a section and welded it back together. Man, I always hate taking steps backwards on a project, but I've learned it's not usually as bad as I think it's going to be. if you just jump in and get to work changing things and don't think too much about it. I think it gives you a new energy when you know you're going in the right direction too. I was lifting the frame up into place for the first time, but realized I needed to trim the brace back about 1/4 of an inch. Got a little tight at the top because I think the wooden barn beam isn't very plumb. But I got the upper cabinet slid into its place for the first time, and I really knew it was the better way to go. It looked a lot better already. I want to hang up a bunch of my battery powered tools on this wall here, and I think I'm going to start with the battery charger. One of the things I don't like about this Makita battery charger is that it slides on from the back like that, and so you can't keep it against the wall. You need like 4 inches of clearance so you can slide it on and off. But I think it'll work great having it mounted on the wall. But another weird choice is that there's no mounting screws in the back side. So I'm gonna have to make a bracket that this will screw onto, and then the bracket will screw onto the wall right there. I replaced the original screws with some that were about 1 inch longer, and then fastened the bracket to the wall. Next, I thought I should work on a holder for my drills, since it was pretty big and I wasn't quite sure how it was going to work yet. I tried to figure out how much space they would need between them, and then started drawing on the computer and cut it out on the CNC plasma table. Seemed like it was going to work okay. I spent a lot of time softening the edges so it doesn't cut into the sides of the drill when I slide them in and out. I used some 1/2 inch anchor bolts and spacers to fasten the plate to the bottom of the cabinet. One thing I've started doing that works really well for drawing lines around real-world objects is taking a picture of them on my craft table, which has a 1 inch square grid on it. I take the picture as far above it as I can and make sure my phone's level, which minimizes skewing. Then, once I have the picture on my computer, I can use the measuring tool to snap a line along the grid, which shows me how much I need to rotate it in the opposite direction to get it level. Also using the measuring tool, I'll count over 20 inches on the grid. With the scaling tool set to percentage, I can divide 20 by the measurement I got, then move the decimal places over 2 spots, and it scales the picture 1 to 1. So 1 inch on the crafting table measures 1 inch on the computer. Then I add points very loosely around the outline of the object before converting the lines to Bezier curves and finally tuning them to accurately match the shape. Lastly, for these tool holders, I added some tabs and cut lines to hold each tool in place against the wall. After I folded the tabs, I welded the cut lines and grinded them smooth. I think I'm really going to like having the outline shape of the tool built into each tool holder, because it'll be so clear where each tool goes. I know pegboards would have been much easier and quicker for the tool wall, but I wanted to go a step above that. It took a lot of time, but it was fun and satisfying figuring out how each tool needed to be held. On a couple of the holders, I designed them to fold back over on themselves, so it'd be a cutout for the tool and then a solid plate underneath it, keeping it from falling through. I wasn't sure how this fold would work with two cut lines just a 1/4 inch apart, but it actually worked great. They both kind of folded together, but usually one would fold faster than the other. And once one fold hit 90 degrees, I stopped and welded it before folding the second one the rest of the way. This is the bracket that will hold the small Milwaukee batteries and charger.
The CNC table had a little goober on the jigsaw cutout. It didn't quite pierce through there, but I know just the tool to fix it. I just spent 20 minutes looking for my dang die grinder to clean up this little hole I cut here, and I can't find it. This is what I'm really trying to improve on with this whole workbench back here. Get a little more organized. Just kills productivity. Just do it by hand here.
Both the holders for the jigsaw and the circular saw have a flat shelf for the tools to sit on. Wasn't quite sure the best way to organize them all on the wall. I just started on the outside with the bigger tools and worked my way in. Some of the tools need to be hung on a small round peg. I drilled a 1/4 inch hole, which I slid a 1/4 inch bolt into, and then plug welded it from the backside. Which I like because it's clean without a weld bead on the front of the holder. I made some small cups to hold pins and other odds and ends. I wanted to leave the bottom of it open though, so it didn't fill up with dirt and debris that'd be hard to clean out. There's an add-in in SketchUp that I use a ton called Unwrap and Flatten Faces, which takes a 3D object and folds it into a flat piece. Super handy for CNC stuff. I thought they turned out pretty good.
We'll see about this one. This one's kind of an experiment. This is going to be 8 little cubbies to store the extra batteries. And I cut all these shelves, and instead of welding them in, I thought I could put little tabs on them, and then there's slots in this, and as it folds up, in theory, it'll lock the shelf in place. We'll see. The hard part's going to be keeping it in place, so I fold it up the rest of the way. Yep, like that. When I was drawing up the battery holder here, I was trying to figure out how much space I needed to be able to get my fingers in there to grab the batteries. And I realized I could just leave it short a little bit so they stick out, and then it's just, I just grab them like that. It saves a little bit of space, and I think it made a lot of sense. This is the first pin holder I made. Made it way too big though, so I scaled it down. But it's still kind of cool, so I think I'll put it on the wall anyways. Got the space for it right here. Thinking maybe I can put my gloves in it or something. Actually, I think I have an idea. Ah, perfect. Last tool. It's too tall to fit underneath here, so I'm gonna stick it on the outside of the post here.
With all the tool holders done, everything came back down, and I took it in to get powder coated. Which was a good time for me to check off another farm job on my to-do list.
Got a little repair job to do on the submersible pump out here in the field. It has a leak on it. I need to get it welded up. And I thought it'd be a good opportunity to try out the new Anchor Solix to power some of my tools. I know the grinder pulls quite a few amps. It's really impressive how well it runs it.
The power station's been really handy to have on the farm. It's so nice to not have a loud generator running all the time while I'm out working in the field. The Anchor Solix F3800 outputs up to 6,000 watts, which can charge multiple heavy-duty appliances simultaneously, like a washer and a dryer at the same time. I thought a real test for the power station would be my welder. I was pretty amazed how well it ran it. My welder runs on 240 volt, which is no problem for the Anchor Solix F3800 as it's dual voltage. It's got both 120 volt and 240 volt output. You can even run an air conditioner with its 240 volt output by connecting to an existing pre-installed transfer switch.
Looks good.
For indoor power supply.
I forgot to vacuum out the clover seat from the drill before I parked it down here in the shed, which doesn't have any power. The power station will work great for this.
One thing that I thought was really cool about this unit is that it's modular, and you can add additional batteries to this unit, which takes it from 3.84 kilowatt hours up to a maximum battery tank of 26.9 kilowatt hours, which could run your whole house for about a week. You can even charge your electric car with this unit, giving you an extra 20 kilometers of range.
I want to do a little experiment and see how long the Anchor Solix runs the TV out here in my hazelnut orchard. There's no power. I got it all set up in the back of the Kubota. It's charging the TV, and it's also charging my camera, catching the time lapse. Sorry to make you watch more of this stuff. I think it's the only thing I have rights to.
A couple days later, a new one arrived, and I was...
Anchor has an app that lets you connect to the battery and see how much longer is left and which ports are being used. You can turn things on and off. It's really handy.
It's Black Friday now. In the description below, there's a link to check out the Anchor Solix line, and it includes a nice discount. It's definitely the right time of year to have backup power on your mind as we head into the winter months. We recently used the Anchor Solix to run the blower on our pellet stove when we lost power on a cold day. Well, it ran all day and there's still a lot of battery left, so I think we're gonna do a family movie night out here in the hazelnut orchard. So now I have the big spotlight, a PS3 spinning a DVD, and the icicle lights and the TV all running off the battery. And it says it still has 6 hours left on it, so really impressive. For some reason, they requested a Disney movie. I don't know why. The Anchor Solix is ideal for camping on RVs. Man, when you're out in nature somewhere pretty, a noisy generator running in the background is about the last thing you want to have to put up with. You can stash the power bank somewhere in your RV or car for silent power when you need it. The Solix comes in multiple different capacities to match your needs. Again, be sure to click the link in the description to get an amazing discount on Anchor this Black Friday. Big thanks to Anchor for sponsoring this video, and I'm so excited to have the Anchor Solix 3800 portable power station on hand here on the farm for all the different times we've either lost power at the house or out in the field doing a job where we don't have access to power in the first place. The Anchor Solix has definitely earned a spot in my workbench, and it fits in right at home. I shifted over to working on the upper cabinet doors, which I wanted to make out of the same old barn boards. I cut them to length and ripped them down a little bit before running them through the planer. The boards weren't quite wide enough for the doors, so I had to biscuit joint and glue them together in pairs. I used the CNC router to notch out the holes for the hinges, and perimeter cut them to their final size. After a light sanding and a coat of polyurethane, I attached some of the leftover handles I had made for the workbench. I was really glad I made a few extra. I finished the door just in time to pick up the parts from the powder coaters. I got the upper cabinet slid back into place and fastened to the wall for the final time. I just never get tired of unwrapping freshly powder coated parts. They always look so nice and make them feel a lot more important than they actually are. All of the parts I got coated in a standard semi-gloss black, but except for this one piece here that holds the drills, and I got it in a poly coat because as it slides in I thought it might grind on the sides of the drills a little bit. I thought the rubberized poly coat might be a little bit softer on it. It's the same thing I did on my dumbbells, and I really liked how that texture turned out. I had to use a reference picture a few times, but I got all the holders back into the same spots they originally were. I got the doors attached. Man, I was so happy I changed directions from what I was originally thinking on this project. I think a more standard upper cabinet is just 10 times better than what I was originally thinking. I installed the under cabinet lights. I ran the wires out from the wall in a piece of conduit. I'm not quite sure how the wires are more commonly ran under cabinets, but I thought this worked pretty well here in the barn. The lights are tied into the same switch that turns on all the lights under the loft, and also the neon sign, which is handy, so I don't have to walk around and turn them all off individually.
Most of these tools I have the quarter version of also, but they just take so much longer to get out and get ready. I gotta find the crate, I gotta get the power cord, I gotta get it plugged in. It takes sometimes 5 or 10 minutes, honestly, to find it and get set up. And that's what I'm so excited about, to have the tool wall. I just grab the tool real quick, make the tiny little cut I got to, and then just get it up there and get going.
I added a shelf in the middle of the upper cabinet. I'm not quite sure what I'm going to put in the upper cabinets. I still need to figure out how best to use that space.
All right, I think I got this project wrapped up. I'm gonna do a rundown on each of the tools as I put them back up there. A circular saw, jigsaw, reciprocating saw, angle grinder, multi-tool, flashlight, got my 24-inch level, my speed squares, gotta love your speed squares, the big 12-inch speed square, laser level, got a protractor, combination square, and T-bevel. Got a spot for my tape measures, and spots for my utility knives. Pin holders, 24-inch squares. I'm gonna put my 12-inch squares there too. Extra battery holders. And the battery charger for the small Milwaukees. Which that 3/8 ratchet goes back here. Which also holds the rest of my drills, starting with the 1/2-inch impact. I've got 5 standard drills. Can never have enough of these. And then 2 small impact drivers, which I'm just using these more and more. I really like them. This spot right here is for my stereo receiver. I got some big speakers up in the loft of the barn. And I got a spot to set my phone. I love throwing my phone down when I get out to the barn and just forgetting about it. And lastly, my bottle of booze. All right, I think this project's done. It turned into a big project. I think it took a couple months to get all this done. But I think it's gonna help a ton with me and my scatterbrain getting more organized. Just knowing where everything is, and when I got that tiny little cut I gotta do, I can just grab the tool and go do it real quick and put it back on the wall and keep going. I think it's gonna be awesome. Next up, I think I'm gonna work on getting everything moved into my toolbox over there. I've got a lot of sockets and wrenches that I wanna get organized, and once I get that done, I think things will be looking pretty good around here.